I want to play, I think this is Judy Woodruff from PBS. I want to play the audio from PBS talking to Mike Pompeo yesterday, and they're talking about the Biden scandal. And listen to what was said.
Just finally, you know that there's been no proof of any misdoing on the part of Vice President Biden.
You all keep repeating that line as if you're working for the DNC.
I'm definitely not working for the DNC. I'm an independent journalist, but the European Union, the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, the International Monetary Fund, and other international organizations felt that that prosecutor was corrupt and thought he should be removed. There's no evidence that what Vice President Biden was doing was corrupt in some way.
Well, Peter Schweizer, how would you respond to that?
Well, what they want to do is they want to go to the firing of the prosecutor. They don't want to talk about the underlying financial arrangements that the Biden family had in Ukraine. And that's sort of their get, right? You can't prove that the crime occurred, so there's nothing to see here. Let's back up again and remember, in February of 2014, the Russians had moved into Crimea in the Ukraine. The Yanukovych government had fallen. There was a crisis. Joe Biden is appointed point person by Barack Obama on U.S. policy towards Ukraine. The buck stops with him. Literally 2 months after that fact, Glenn, his son, Hunter Biden, becomes a board member of Burisma, this corrupt Ukrainian energy company. It's headed by Zlochevsky, this corrupt oligarch who was in the Yanukovych pro-Russian government to begin with. And they pay Hunter, according to the banking records, $83,000 a month. And he takes over $3 million in total from this Ukrainian company. He has no background in energy. He has no background in Ukraine. And it's not even clear what he did, if anything.
Okay, hang on just a second. I want to add to this. His background, and I'm sure you've done enough reporting to know his background, especially at that time, he is a very unstable individual.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously don't like to get into the personal situation.
No, I don't want to look, I'm an alcoholic, so I don't want to denigrate him for that. What I want to say is he doesn't have any skills, and at the time, he's also an unstable alcoholic and drug guy that has, if you were going to put somebody on the board, if he didn't bring anything special, he didn't bring any experience, and he was unstable, why would you hire this guy other than he's the dad of the vice president?
That's exactly right, Glenn. He had substance abuse issues. You add that onto the top of the fact that he had no experience and no background with this company. And the question becomes, why was he being paid? He's not being paid for his skill set or his expertise. Why is he being paid? Now, the response from a lot of the press corps, not all of it, but a lot of it has been, well, this goes on all the time. As if that's A, acceptable, or B, if that's actually true. It is true. We've had a history of family members of politicians, trying to cash in. You had Billy Carter back in the day. You had some stuff with Neil Bush. But what makes the Biden case unusual is how systematic and widespread it is. It involves Ukraine. It involves China. There's this bank account that I think we've shared with you, Glenn, this Morgan Stanley account where Hunter Biden was drawing cash out of. We got access to this bank account because of a criminal case involving Hunter Biden's business partner. And that shows money coming from a Kazakh oligarch during this same period. It shows money coming from anonymous Swiss bank accounts, particularly a small Swiss bank that has been implicated in money laundering in 5 countries. So, I mean, to say, oh, well, nothing's been proven that it's wrong here is just laughable. And it's this lack of curiosity. Judy Woodruff doesn't even seem to be curious about any of this. That is so bizarre. And
well,
by the way,
she says here also that, nothing has been proven, and the embassy even says that this guy was. What she's saying is that these international groups did not say that he didn't do anything wrong. She's using those international groups saying this prosecutor needed to be fired. Well, that's a different thing. And by the way, the prosecutor that replaced that prosecutor is investigating Joe Biden's son.
Exactly. And Glenn, this is a key point. It's a key point. To say, on the one hand, that people think the prosecutor should be fired, and to say, on the other hand, that it is entirely inappropriate for Joe Biden to get this guy fired, those are not mutually exclusive. Both of those are absolutely correct. And the bottom line is that is an abuse of power by Joe Biden, and he is using his office to directly or indirectly benefit his son. And the problem is that they've lied about this repeatedly. I mean, first they said, Glenn, no, there was no investigation by Hunter. That was already over before the guy was fired. The prosecutor has denied that, and even the Burisma company's lawyer, a guy named Mr. Beretta, who was hired in part at the suggestion of Hunter Biden, said the investigation was ongoing at this time and didn't end until later on.
So here's another thing, Peter, that maybe you can help shed some light on. Joe Biden comes over, and this is all according to record. He comes over and he says, look, I think we can help your gas and oil industry expand. Right. So he goes over and he says, we have $1.8 billion that we are going to give you in U.S. aid, and you guys, it'll help you guys explore. At the same time, Burisma hires Devon Archer and Joe Biden's son. They're on the board, so they get the money. Now, the money is put into a bank called Private Bank, and it's owned by the oligarch that is running Burisma.
Yeah.
That $1.8 billion just disappears. We don't know where that money went. So
yes,
why isn't anybody talking about that part of it?
No, that's exactly right. I mean, this is another oligarch. There are two oligarchs that are involved with Burisma. One of them is Lechevsky. The other one is named Kolomoisky. And this guy is basically a Bond villain. He's out of a James Bond film. In fact, he has in his office a large fish tank that has sharks swimming in it, just to sort of tell you how this guy rolls. And he owns Privat Bank, which is this large Ukrainian bank, which U.S. and Western aid dollars and loan guarantees are sent into. And the problem is that, a large chunk of that money disappears, and Ukrainian anti-corruption groups have sort of traced what happened to the money, and they make, I think, a very convincing case that Kolomoisky and his team set up a bunch of LLCs and siphoned off that money.
Correct.
So now you have a situation of missing aid dollars that seem to have benefited Kolomoisky, who is involved in the payment to Hunter Biden of these board fees, $83,000 a month.
And Kolomoisky is also a guy who, before the Bidens arrived, was known as such a bad Bond villain that he is on a do not enter, no visa list. He cannot get a visa to come to the United States. Right. But in the month that we discover, the money is missing, somehow or another, this guy gets a visa to be able to travel to the United States. Who did that? What was that?